but right now doing best of fives. It's hard to imagine ShoWTimE winning a best of 5 against Dark. Maybe a best of 3, but
you can't pull a fast one on him here, Tasteless.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of Protosses are very reliant on timing attacks here to prevent Zerg from stretching the game into the late game. Game 1 is going to be on Acropolis. Dark for ShoWTimE starts now. In the bottom right, in the red, our Korean Zerg player. He is
Dragon Phoenix Gaming, Dark.
And in the upper left, in the blue, our German Protoss player. He is
Makers, ShoWTimE.
And a great point brought up, even in the previous discussions, also the gang on the desk talking about it. The maps, Tasteless. We've got a lot of big maps in this pool. Generally speaking, people talk about how that favors the Zergs, but we do expect with those discussions around the late game that Protoss players in this tournament should be highly motivated to try and strike before Zergs can reach that stage. So my big curiosity coming out of ShoWTimE in this best of 5, what kind of aggression is he going to bring? How much is he going to vary it? And how fast is he going to try to hit? Because I think if you're trying to tango with Dark in a 20-minute long macro game, well, you're going to have a rough time.
And I think even though we could all agree that in some ways Zerg is superior in a very long, drawn-out game because of the way they can utilize their units in the late game, Dark is also known for occasionally just doing an insane rush. He seems to rush at the moments we would least predict it to happen in a best of 5. Sometimes it's moments that don't seem like it's necessary, but a lot of times he takes free wins with that. But if you're both going for timing attacks, then you're in a completely different game entirely.
As we see the fast third base is going to be taken by Dark. On this low ground, does not want to deal with the probe trying to block his expansion. And the other important thing to bring up is as far as a best of 5 goes, since you're not pulling a fast one, that first map can still really set the tone for the rest of the series. If ShoWTimE is able to nail a really sharp timing attack and bring down Dark in game number 1, that motivation boost, that confidence boost can really have a positive impact and can leave Dark kind of questioning what he's going for later. And conversely, if ShoWTimE were to get smacked down here, it could break his motivation for the rest of this match since he does come in as the underdog.
Yeah, it's also one other idea we want to keep floating here is that it's not just whether or not the Protoss does a timing attack. There's so many different ways that you can try to attack in there, different unit compositions and different angles to hit them at that it matters, how you're going to go about doing that and can the Zerg get a good read on it. Now, Zergs, the very best in the world, tend to get a very good read right away on what's happening and can very quickly deduce what's coming. So I'm curious to see if there's going to be any red herrings or cancellations in builds here. And actually, with this Ling scouting in here, that's about as
you can't ask for too much more than that. I was about to make the comment that a lot of the players this week have been talking about things like Overlord speed in PvZ. It's very easy for the Zerg players now to get those earlier scouts if they really want it. Something that we see Serral do a lot, actually, almost always going for that fast speed. But you don't need that if you just slip the Zergling in early enough. You get a read on the tech, okay? You know that it's going to be that Stargate, and you're going to prepare accordingly.
Yeah, in this game, I want to point out as well, ShoWTimE has, I think, out of all the non-Korean players, him and Serral, probably the most even-tempered attitudes going into their games. Serral strikes me as a person who's just very well-rounded, very introspective, very realistic with himself. So I don't think nerves are going to be as much of a factor, even though I think it is still fair to say that ShoWTimE is probably at the bottom tiers of the players that we have here.
Right, and to that point as well, it's that kind of well-roundedness and not being as much of an emotional or explosive player where you're just kind of relying on that stable skill set, which is a big part of what created this enigma of Serral's talent and his success, is that there is no trick to his success. He is just playing extremely well. He's not relying on rotating gimmick builds throughout the meta, and just you have to outplay him to beat him, which is why he doesn't lose. We're going to see as Oracle first come in for ShoWTimE, grabbing a couple of drones, getting a little bit of information. The Phoenix checking around the backside of the main as well, and trying to get a read on what Dark's going for in this match.
And since we're still early on in this game, I do want to remind everybody, and we heard the boys on the couch say this earlier as well, is that we did see Dark have a bumpy time here in GSL versus the World. I mean, that upset to a laser was pretty shocking, and Dark has been known to talk a lot of trash on the non-Korean players. Historically, of course, Korea's been more dominant in Starcraft than almost any nation's been in anything ever. And so,
Pretty much.
so to then see Dark lose in a pretty crazy upset to that, I'm very certain he wants to have a very strong closer here and continue to keep a reputation, or protect Korea's reputation as being the dominant nation. Since out of all the Koreans, he's the most likely one, probably, unless you're Artosis and says Rogue, he's the most likely one to take this this tournament this year.
Yeah, looking at
that's a Korean, I should say.
Yeah, looking at the setup that we have for this game, it's the 3 Oracle opening, something that we saw pop up a good amount in this year towards the second half. And you get this ability to put on the pressure with the Oracles. You get this opportunity to grab these drones just to clean a little bit out of place. You can use those revelations, but also you have that the damage output on the defensive end when those Zerglings come into play is something to really consider, since Dark, he's flooding out a ton of Zerglings, really looking for a big cancellation, knock down this third base, and this is a huge moment for ShoWTimE. Has to control his units very carefully. +1 melee Zerglings can do a lot of damage. Upgrade's not done just yet. Force Field's in to protect the sentry, but the Zerglings get on top of him.
Really nice covering over here. Looks like these Lynx might be able to take out that last Zealot, but overall, this attack was not very successful. Those were Banelings without speed. Good arc with those force fields, making it impossible for the Banelings to connect with any of their targets. And we still have some more Lynx coming out, 6 more with plenty more Lynx moving across the map. Zerg's gone back into drones, but that didn't seem like a very strong maneuver there by Dark.
I really like this build choice by ShoWTimE, just because the key focus of this strategy is that you sustain the Oracles so that you have them to help defend against these Ling attacks that do come in. And even with that +1, when you've got 3 Oracles, good luck trying to knock down that Immortal. Also really like the fast shield battery he had on the third base. So ShoWTimE's economy goes up uninhibited, 66 probes, 64 drones. Dark is going to start cranking more of those out now as he secures that 4th base, but all things said and done, ShoWTimE has been allowed to play the game that he wants to play. Let's see how far he can take that against the #1 ranked Korean circuit player.
Yeah, so far ShoWTimE has brushed off the Zerg's attacks pretty easily. I gotta say, Dark so far here, tactically, it's been a lot of half measures. But for now, absolutely, ShoWTimE's gonna be able to develop further. We have 5 more gateways coming down, Templar Archives and Zealot Legs about to finish up. We do have Zerg on a 4th base now. I don't know when we're gonna have a push coming here. I mean, it's easy to guess it's gonna be close to when these gateways are done, but he might want to try to bank up a little bit more, maybe wait for Dark to try to take a 5th when he might be a little bit more exposed.
He's going to start the 4th Nexus, so he's not putting everything on, just going for an attack really soon. I mean, like a +1 attack is not necessarily the craziest thing. He does have charge now, so he could try to use that to supplement those Immortals before any big tech comes out for the Zerg. But instead we're seeing multiple hallucinations to scout. The Oracles come in, grab a few more drones, and you're at least selling this. You're like, okay, those Zerglings come by, they see that hatchery is there. But ShoWTimE doing a really good job of it earlier. We saw just kind of keeping those Lings away from his bases. We're not seeing those run-bys come in, which can be such a devastating issue. But Tasteless, we have a Nidus network starting up at Dark Space.
This was an immediate reaction to the 4th Nexus that started over here. Now, generally speaking, we might even have a second Nidus added in here, but the Zerg is going to try to punish the Protoss for being out of position. Protoss can try to use recall, but not as rapidly as multiple Niduses hitting in different areas. So it's going to be really a game of ShoWTimE trying to put out fires. If he can handle this attack and deflect everything, he might have a very good counterattack opportunity here on Dark.
And if you look at just the armies that they're putting together, it's a lot of low-tech units for Dark. A lot of Lings, Roaches, some Ravagers mixed in. He is getting a Hive, but he's not going for anything like Hydralisk. There's no Infestors here. It's not going to be Nidus Swarmhost shenanigans. He's going to put that Nidus in the main base. Immediate reaction from ShoWTimE to warp in and try and shut this down. But if he could get a head-to-head engagement with the kind of army that he's working with, he's got some powerful units in there, adding several more Archons. He's got the upgrades coming in for those Zealots and the Immortal Backbone. But is he going to get pulled too far away to protect his expansions, Tasteless?
Good surround over here on these Archons. The Roaches, Ravagers, and Lynx come up, pull the army over there, and then try to loop back around. We may see the Nidus try to come back up here into the main. Now over at the 4th, again, Dark juking and jiving, trying to find out if there's any opening. Behind this, he's mustering up more and more Banelings, and it looks like this attack might be a committal.
He's going to bring the Oracles over to her, trying to help focus down those Ravagers in the back line. Biles breaking down a few of the force fields. The Immortals in the back needs to bring the rest of this to start this engagement. That's a lot of Banelings, but splitting those important tech units and not being too heavy on the Zealots. All the big expensive units, Tasteless, they're still alive at the end of this fight.
And ShoWTimE completely knocks this attack off, now chasing down the remaining Roaches here. We saw those Banelings dive in there, and they just did not connect with any of the right targets. I think we saw maybe 1 or 2 sentries killed off, but overall, it was just Immortals, and it was Archons, which Banelings are just not ideal against. And so ShoWTimE backs off, keeping the majority of those Archons and Immortals alive, but for now, their supplies are looking very even. We have more of the same tech coming back up here, Lings and Banelings. There is a Spire being developed, but I'm starting to think that Protoss is going to have an opportunity to attack, and we might even be seeing that now with this army branching towards the north, possibly going to loop around and try to hit the 3 o'clock expansion.
Yeah, we're still, just like we were talking about earlier, there's just not this focus on the tech for Dark. His tech has been like supplemental with the support. He's getting Adrenal Glands, he has the Nidus in play, the Spire is done, he's going to go straight to the Greater Spire, but you just have to be careful because that army is very powerful for ShoWTimE. With this many Archons and Immortals, he didn't really lose any of them in those previous fights, just that one Archon prior to the start of that last engagement. But as Dark, you want to keep ShoWTimE from trying to make a big attack with these powerful tech units before you can get Broodlords out.
Okay, we have the Banelings coming in here right now. They're unloading. It looks like they're going to take out a pretty small number of probes, actually. And here we have ShoWTimE's attack coming out over here, headed towards the right side of the map. Now, ShoWTimE has held off every attack from Dark thus far, and now he is going to get this opportunity. We talked about ShoWTimE doing a timing attack early on to avoid late game. He did the exact opposite. He's now maxed out. He is ready to take the Zergon. Let's see how this attack goes. It's going to be right down here at 6 o'clock.
He's got a massive charge lot flank on the northeast side, but there are quite a few Banelings Tasteless. They'll be happy to run into those Zealots, while the Lings go into a choke point of Archons. Also not good for those units.
Yeah, he sent Zealots out from both the very top and the very bottom of the map ball. He has this Archon Immortal Death Ball here in the middle. And I don't know if there's going to be any way for Dark to hold this up. This attack is looking very scary.
He's hitting him right before that Greater Spire finishes up, Tasteless, and being pushed back. There's not a crazy amount of creep. The Lings are going to come in from the backside. The Archons want to be able to get that splash damage onto them, but needs a bit more of those Warpins to support this to continue the fight.
Oh my god, and Dark just barely has enough, but meanwhile these Zealots are doing so much damage over at 3 o'clock once more. The main tech that ShoWTimE has built up has been destroyed, but did these little attacks over here, for instance, at this hatchery, did this do enough to balance things out? There's also a Nidus network available to be remade again here. It seems like the army for ShoWTimE is beginning to thin out. He's going to have to go back, rebuild, and tech up if he's going to continue on in this game.
It was a super powerful push, but you almost have to go right back into it. He doesn't necessarily have anything that can deal with a Broodlord follow-up if Dark was given time to recover, so brings those Oracles to the forefront. The Corruptor's actually not getting hits on those, and they're able to focus down the Ravagers while the Archons continue to blow away these Zerglings. It's just Lings and Roaches. That Greater Spire has not been put to use. The Corruptor's been trying to deal with that Warp Prism.
The attack continues to come in here. There's more and more Zealots warping in. There might just be enough to actually break Dark off. We only see Queens here defending, and the Broodlords, they do not pop out in time, and GG. ShoWTimE takes game number 1.
Very well done there by ShoWTimE.
Oh my god.
You were just saying it, Tasteless, before this game started. Sometimes Dark gets a little crazy on the aggressive side. He's not trying to necessarily force that late game. And in that situation, did not play well against. I really love ShoWTimE's choice of build, going for that 3 Oracle strategy, just giving yourself that offensive capability, but as long as you don't lose the Oracles and you retain them, man, the map control he had, being able to defend against that first big attack on his third base, and stopping that Nidus, good reaction time, good awareness.
Yeah.
He just brushed it off his
exactly
shoulders.
3 Zealots at that warp in time with the Nidus there, and you will kill it off. He did not overreact at all. We're going to go to Thunderbird here for game 2. If you're just now joining us in a pretty crazy upset, ShoWTimE is now 1-0 against Dark. Dark, the #1 ranked Korean. It was a macro game, guys. It wasn't like ShoWTimE won with a cheeky timing attack. It wasn't like Dark cheesed and it just totally backfired. I gotta say, though, the way Dark was played, it looked like he really didn't believe that ShoWTimE was gonna go for a macro game. He attacked in several times completely unnecessarily. He did not have that very frightening Zerg tech that we oftentimes see in the late game, because there was so much investment on fighting there from Dark.
Well, just look at the setup that Dark had, right? He opens up with the fast +1 melee, and he has the Baneling Nest. He's ready for something to try and come at him early on.
Yeah.
When you've got that many Zerglings running around the map, and then he's like, well, oh, you just took a third base? Oh, so all I can do is look for a hole in your wall? And ShoWTimE, he's on top of that. He was ready. Just beautiful play.
Game 2 has loaded up. Dark for ShoWTimE continues on. In the bottom right, in the red. Sorry, guys, I dropped the ball. Our Zerg player from Korea, he is
Dragon Phoenix Gaming, Dark.
We're not doing the normal GSL openings here. We stay quiet. In the upper left, in the blue, our Protoss player from Germany, he is
Makers, ShoWTimE.
It's cool to be here casting in Korea, but I'm not sure I was brave enough to try and do the lead up to the epic voice intros, Tasteless. That's next level. I'm still
It's
learning.
usually the part I'm the most spaced out at, to be totally honest. I was sitting there waiting for the names to come up and the zoom-ins, and I heard that Castor Park was still talking because they're waiting for me to cue it in. So.
Oh, yeah.
Anyways, what an exciting series to start things off. We've got ShoWTimE winning game 1 in a macro game. He was very patient. He was very calculated in how he moved around the map. Thanks for coming down, everybody, by the way. Welcome. This is, I know we don't have as much room in the studio as we normally have because we have the analysis desk down there, but we're really glad you guys could make it down. But yeah, anyways, we've got this crazy situation where ShoWTimE is showing that he can go head-to-head with the #1 ranked Zerg in Korea.
Yeah, and that's awesome. I mean, I think you definitely looking at the results across the year. You had Dark, as you said, #1 ranked in Korean for points, and then ShoWTimE, who self-admittedly is like, I had an average year. You know, like I feel like I could have used a few more weeks of practice. Zerg is strong versus Protoss right now, but he comes and he just plays his game, and he's able to take advantage of Dark maybe being ready for something that was never going to come. So I like that. He goes for the front wall on the big ramp here on Thunderbird, which means that he's going to have that option to go for an earlier wall and try to take a fast third if he feels like playing the economic game, since this map is one of the definition of big. You know, you look it up. There you go. Thunderbird, 3 bases right there, 1 ramp that leads into all of them without those mineral patches being mined out. You're looking at longer games on this map usually.
I heard from the other casters, or maybe it was actually you, Nate, I'm not sure, that ShoWTimE said he was planning on macroing on this, but I also heard rumors that he was planning on all-inning on 2 bases on the other maps, and that didn't happen in game 1. So I don't know if the meta's gotten so crazy that the pro gamers are now lying to the casters in the hopes that different information is circulating about their play. I don't know.
Well, you know, after I had breakfast with ShoWTimE, I had lunch with Dark, and he's like, so what did he tell you? I'm like, well, there you go. That's why I got to build a Baneling Nest on 2 bases.
So we have an Oracle build coming out here now. As Nate was mentioning earlier, this is a huge map, and it's very easy. It's very welcoming to get a 3rd base on it. It's basically, you're highly incentivized to want to do so. If you were going to do an all-in, it would have to be something very specific that would play around the fact that there's 1 ramp and 1 entrance to get to 3 spots here.
ShoWTimE, by the way, still thinking about possible aggression. He's got a unit patrolling by the minerals on the right side of where that 3rd base is, because he just wants to know in case some early drones do come out. Dark is the kind of player where in your preparation, like, okay, well, he might do something weird to try and punish me for assuming that I can be greedy on a large map. And that's kind of the circle of life in Starcraft 2, where the map that looks like it's good for economy, like, well, this is why I cheese on it every game, because no one expects it, or all their builds are greedy, so they just have a hard time adjusting even if they do scout it. But opening with Stargate, it's the old faithful of builds. So 2 Oracles, then a Phoenix, and he leaves the pylon at the minerals, so he will know if Dark tries to pull anything on him, at least by his base.
Now, he had pulled these 2 Oracles. He didn't send the first one out immediately. Probably trying to surprise the Zerg a little bit with the timing at which this is going to come out. There is a Robo coming here as well, as that Phoenix is being made here too. On the Zerg side of the map, I mean, everything seems pretty par for the course of this phase of the game. There's a minimal amount of lings that have been made, but it's mostly just drones and teching.
Yeah, especially with the Stargate opening coming out from ShoWTimE in game 1. If he was going to do that in the second game, taking that lower third base so much more forward, gets the creep spreading from out there a little bit faster, and this base, well, you know, Zerg is always going to have the easier time taking those expansions that are a little bit more stretched out, so now he's got that base basically in his pocket, and can take that whenever he wants later on.
This is a very old concept that was used in StarCraft, is taking a third at a place that's a little bit riskier, but it guarantees the fourth is free in a lot of ways, and I don't know if we're going to see any kind of attack come out here. It seems so far like ShoWTimE is once again just going to go into very passive play.
Yeah, trying to bring that pressure. It certainly plays into the expectation, though. As an underdog, you would say to yourself, okay, well, should I have to do something crazy aggressive? Well, my opponent might prepare for that. So I like that he's bringing out this A game, this strong macro game. Big things to keep in mind. The Oracle retention is the best part of this build, because those 3 Oracles are going to be that's your lifeline to pull you out of a tight situation where you get Ling flooded or some big attack happens like we had in the last game. So do the poking, do the prodding, get a few workers here and there, but try and keep those Oracles alive as long as possible. We saw him use a lot of stasis wards actually in his setup on Acropolis, just saying, okay, well, I can still use these in so many different ways, but we don't have anything similar to last game from Dark. He's going into Roaches, he's got that +1 missile attack early on, he's going to get some Lings in here in Roach speed, but it's not that focus on the Ling Bane to start off this map.
There's a very tiny squad of Protoss units that are now moving through the middle of the map. The Oracles are going to come down. I believe they might try to snipe off some workers. Now remember that Protoss can recall here, and this is great play because that's enough damage that he just has to not expand there. So the whole idea, this is great. He's going to get out just barely. I think he loses 1 sentry there. So let's go big picture here, what we just saw. The 4th base, which was supposed to be taken there just at that screenshot we had earlier, is supposed to be free because it's basically impossible for the Protoss to get there by land, but there's enough Oracles they can zap that down, and you just don't get to take it. You don't have the kind of anti-air that can easily fight this. So immediately Dark is going to go into a Nidus Worm, and he's going to try to do something seriously offensive. We see ShoWTimE gearing up to possibly be attacked here as he goes behind his wall in.
But it's not the same Nidus that we've seen in the first map. Not that same style. We're going a little bit over towards, we got 13 Swarm Hosts in production, Tasteless. So on this map, I was actually talking to, ShoWTimE mentioned this as one of the things on this map that can be tricky when you play those macro games, is you can put a Nidus south of that natural, go over that large gap. It's very hard to get to that worm, and then you can put it on this right side. So having the Oracles on patrol looking for that
on
so
point.
nice.
He's so good.
Does he have enough energy
I don't actually think he
has.
Wait, hold on. All right, he's got 5 energy. Yeah, this is just... No!
Oh!
No!
You gotta turn on the other microwave, man.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, gets it.
Well,
all right,
we can start another one.
Okay.
And that's the threat here, is you have to have something here to deal with these Lokis, because their damage output, their DPS is so high. But now the ground army, the rest of the forces come over here. 16 pros immediately vaporized while that front wall gets bashed down.
And he's actually, he could possibly lose the Cybernetics core and the Robo. Meanwhile, these Lings actually got in here. And this attack is doing damage in so many different places at once, it's hard to even keep up with. But I'm getting worried now here for ShoWTimE. He had an initial good showing in this game, but the damage is piling on here from Dark.
How crazy is that? What was it, like 5 hit points on the Nidus? Like if you cancel that, you buy yourself so much more time at least. You have to wait for that next one to start up and finish. And now all of a sudden you've lost a ton of workers in that third base. There's still multiple Nidus networks or Nidus worms active, so he can bounce between them. And if you try to leave your base to try and knock those down once the Oracles are out of energy, well, this is going to keep happening.
Oh my God, he's everywhere. Dives onto the Nexus.
Goodbye, Nexus.
Meanwhile, the entrance over here is getting torn apart. In fact, there's no longer any pylons there. And a maxed out Dark is continuing to hit from so many different angles as ShoWTimE is getting garbage compacted.
Yeah, no, that is exactly what is happening, man. It's this is the horror movie Brave Little Toaster right now. ShoWTimE is stuck between Ling Ravager and a bunch of Swarm Hosts coming out of Nidus Worms. Now the Queen here as well to help. You can also push the Oracles away, but get the creep spread out there. Just assuming that this somehow doesn't kill ShoWTimE in this phase of the game, he's just going to make it as hard as possible for him to recover were he able to push this off.
It seems like he wants to flood the entrance over here. And this is like...
His tech is all here too.
Yeah.
Cybernetics core, Robo.
Incidentally, with Cyber Core and Robo, you're going to lose so much of the tech that is necessary to hold off this rush. And there's so many Swarm hosts. It looks like Protoss might try to push down and take a fight, but I'm just worried there's going to be too big of an army here. Even without the Swarm host, it seems like this is too hard to take on.
Yeah, well, he didn't have the same level of economy or production, right? He's losing gateways, lost so many workers, and being able to put out those power units to fight against this, well, once you pay that down payment on Swarm host, it is hard to fight against those locusts. GG Dark is going to tie this series up 1-1.
Okay, that was a really good game by him. That's the Dark we're used to seeing. He actually was taking, he was almost falling into the trap of what ShoWTimE was trying to do, using those oracles to deny that fourth base and ideally pressuring Dark into expanding to an uncomfortable fourth when he already took a risky third. But Dark switched gears so fast. Immediately with a Nidus, teched into Swarm hosts, identified a soft spot just at the top center of the map, used that, shelled him with the Locust, and then started hitting from different areas, and there was just nothing that ShoWTimE could do.
Just really well done. Good adjustment from the first map as well. Being able to set up the forces the way that he had them was just absolutely awesome. Going for that fast +1 on the missile attacks instead of focusing on banelings for the starting aggression.
I was really, really impressed with Dark in that game. I mean, he looks so strong, so reactive. If he doesn't over-predict what his opponent's doing, it seems like he's basically fine. I'm wondering what ShoWTimE could have done differently back there. You know, I guess...
Have a few more energy on his oracle.
Well, I guess one thing was that he sent that small army out with the Immortal and the few sentries, try to do... make it look like there's possibly a timing attack coming, and then he used the oracles to get rid of the hatchery. But sometimes when you're against Swarm host, recalls are very important. You need to have your army basically preempting theirs. I guess it could have also been a different story had there been just a little bit more energy on the oracle.
Like what happens if he buys himself a little more time before that first wave comes in?
If he kills the first Nidus,
right?
Yeah. Because when you see the Nidus there, you know it's Swarm host as well. So it's not often that we can say a game might have come down to one or two more energy on an oracle, but that game actually could be one of them.
What if the oracle, the third one, doesn't die while they're taking down that hatchery? When it comes to Swarm host play, when I see them versus Protoss and even versus like Mech Terran, a lot of it comes down to that first wave of locusts, is being able to kind of catch them off guard before you are able to situate yourself and be on top of chasing those down, bullying them away. And he gets that first wave off at the perfect time, barely any health on the Nidus. Says, all right, I'm going to rally them to the mineral line, hold position. All your probes are dead.
Yeah. I also wonder if we're going to have a timing attack here. We were saying, I mean, the way the meta is right now, you tend to see Protosses try to end the game before it can really start up for the Zerg. We did see in both of these games either very intentionally late game play, like in game one. I think we needed to have game two go on for a little bit longer. That was really Zerg seizing control of the game, and we had to see if ShoWTimE was able to hold off the attacks. But I think if ShoWTimE's going to win this, we should see at least one or two very aggressive timing attacks that are meant to smother the Zerg.
Yeah, it makes me want to compliment Dark again for having that low ground as his third base because it's so open. There's no ramp really for ShoWTimE to try and make that early Sentry Immortal poke with too. So he basically guaranteed that he was going to be able to get an open engagement and set himself up very nicely to get up to those Swarm hosts without any real threat from ShoWTimE had he tried to go for an early attack.
Disco Bloodbath is our map for game number 3, and that starts now. Let's go. In the right, in the red, our Zerg player from Korea. He is
Dragon Phoenix Gaming, Dark.
In the left, in the blue, our German Protoss player. He is
Makers, ShoWTimE.
Going off of the first two games, I mean, ShoWTimE basically goes for the ultimate bread and butter PvZ build on Acropolis, and he kind of holds off a little bit of poking, a little bit of prodding from Dark, and being able to take that win. Totally understand. You go to the macro map. All right, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to try to execute well and deal with whatever Dark throws at me and build up that, eventual Immortal Archon charge lot attack that he wants to make before Broodlords come out. But now that that didn't work, and you're on another map where there's some pretty good air opportunities. You've got that whole space below the main base for ShoWTimE, where eventually a Nidus with Stormhost can be really difficult to deal with. You can hit those that main base from that backside area. It's not tucked in the corner like on some maps. So does ShoWTimE change it up now as a response, thinking, okay, well, I can't just keep doing the same thing because Dark is already starting to adjust?
Yeah, that is one important feature about this being. What's Brown Bell? Welcome back, guys. It's one important feature about the way. Oh, hold on a second. What is he doing with this? Is he gonna make a Stargate up there?
He did get that cybernetics core before he went for the Nexus.
He's taken pretty quickly.
And it's 3 hatch opening from Dark, not rushing any early units out that could threaten him. Of course, the Overlord will see that the cybernetics core is very early, but the Stargate is not in his base. So, Dark, I guess the ideal scenario for ShoWTimE here is he's able to get out maybe a fast Oracle, maybe bank 2 if he's trying to be really cheeky and just get a bunch of early damage done, maybe some early adepts with it.
Well, let's keep in mind, in the last game, he pulled the first 2 Oracles.
Right.
And brought them out a little bit later. You know that the Zerg is probably thinking of that and probably wants to identify, okay, is he going to do something like that again this time around? The best way for me to find out is to get something into the main and confirm that there's a Stargate there, when in fact there's not. But he can still pull out of this Stargate here at 12 o'clock, and it might completely give the Zerg a bad read on the situation, and this could end up doing a lot of damage.
You have to ask yourself, like, if my opponent is hiding his tech, right? He has this fast cybernetics core. The tech obviously isn't here in the front. If my opponent is doing this type of thing, like, what would you proxy? And you're trying to, like, okay, well, I want to hide something. I want to hide my tech, like it's a fast, like, DTs or a robotics facility so you can warp your units in closer to the opponent's base, but it's just off to the side. So it's not in a place where if he checks around his base, he's not going to find that Stargate. It's over on ShoWTimE's side. He really just wants to be able to catch him off guard, but this isn't going to put him in a position where he's all in by any means.
Oh, and I stand corrected. He will not pull this at all. He's just going to send the Oracle out immediately. And this is very quick access over here to where these drones are. And so he's going to get quite a high amount of kills here. And one thing that's hard about when you're fighting against an Oracle is just how fast your workers end up dying. It looks like he's barely going to get out without losing the Oracle entirely.
So 4 drones with that first Oracle. Second one comes out, and then a Phoenix. We'll see if whether or not he wants to get the third one a little bit later. But there is a side benefit when you're doing something like this. You're getting these Oracles out so fast, assuming that you can keep them alive. I mean, they just keep running on their energy, right? You're having them out earlier. You do those earlier pokes. You come back in later. Just have to be careful about not losing anything. Comes by the third. He's going to be able to snag 2 more drones and just cruise on out.
Yeah, and he's just ahead of the timings of when these spores finish, excuse me. And so taking out those 2 drones. So that's been 6 drones killed total here, which is much more than you normally get with the first 2 Oracles.
He's looking for it as well. It's like, where is that Stargate? And does find it. Probe taking some damage. Going to go straight onto that pylon. Not sure we're going to be able to see that.
Yeah, I don't think this last Oracle is going to get out. This pylon should go down. So he's going to be stuck on 2 Oracles. Stargate tech's basically out of the question now.
Straight to the third base. 3 adepts here. Not enough links to push this base back.
Good instinct, though, with Dark and those links to double check and see if that expansion's going to be taken.
Good awareness. Well, it's like, okay, well, I didn't see the Stargate. Naturally, it has to be somewhere. Immediately getting rid of that. Can we talk about what makes the 3 Oracle openers so good, and he just can't pull that off. Loses one of them, and now you have to start to think about those Ling plays that he wanted to do in the first game.
Yeah.
Well, what happens if he runs at you with a bunch of +1 Lings, right? And we see that he's not getting like a fast +1 melee, but suddenly it's something in the back of your head. You're like, well, I don't have 3 Oracles to deal with a Ling flood if it comes.
Yeah, the Oracles, I think a lot of people see them as units that are for harassment and for tagging big groups of the army later on. But against Zergs early on, especially ones with mass Lings, just using them to defend your Nexus is very important. And 3 of them is so much that you're basically not worried about anything.
Yeah. Oracles are fantastic at defending those types of attacks too. They attack super fast, especially when they're hitting, like, when you can kill a unit and immediately start shooting the next one underneath them. The Oracles attack even a little bit faster. That's really where they shine outside of the worker harass. But sends the Phoenix around. He's looking for tech, looking for stuff to scout. The lair is done. The Phoenix, I'm pretty sure, was able to see that. So Roach speed is going to start, and Aspire.
Now we have the Protoss. It looks like flirting with the idea of coming out, or at least telling the Zerg that he wants to move out on the map. I mean, we saw this in Game 2 as well with the recall that was really nicely done. But again, in that game, there were 3 oracles that could deny a hatch. This time around, he's got to be careful, by the way. Some of this army is on high ground, other parts are on low ground. If you get caught by lings, you are going to lose a lot of that.
That's the weird thing about Disco Bloodbath as well, because you just have this big low ground in front of your base, and there's these high ground pathways where you're like, oh, I'm going to walk to the center of the map, and you don't realize that there's just a little force sitting outside there. You can have units picked off on accident. You need to be really careful. We saw him move out with a small number of units on Thunderbird, and you're kind of provoking a response from the Zerg there. You're like, hey, build units, spend your larva on something that isn't drones, but tasteless. It's on the way again. Guess who's back?
This is one thing that has remained consistent in this series, is that there's always going to be a Nidus Swarming around this time of the game.
It's so frustrating to deal with, too, especially without that Oracle hit squad. Like, you are not going to be able to easily deny those, because he could pop one on one side and then straight on the other. The Oracle runs out of energy. Then it's so hard to get onto the map and shut this down.
Oh, wow.
And that first wave of Swarm Host is going to be what sets the tempo for this. Like, if you can smack that back and get a little bit of control, that's a lot of supply for the Zerg that's just kind of stuck there. But here comes the Overseer. The Nidus Network is done. Swarm Hosts are popping out, and
you're absolutely right that there's almost the cooldown of the Locust is almost a resource in of itself. Yeah. Every time they come out, they have to do a high amount of damage to a very important target before they escape and come out somewhere else. And by the way, here's a second Nidus coming here too.
You know, when you watch Swarm Host games, that first wave, when the player is just not 100% expecting it, and they're like, oh, something is coming, but I'm not sure what it is. But like, if your army's in the wrong spot and those locusts click on a nexus, it is dead. But look at this, comes in with the lings as well. He says, oh, you got zealots and sentries, I'll happily fight you, or else have my locusts come in. Is he just targeting it down, just fighting random units?
I think he started initially on the nexus and then decided to just turn and hit anything he could hit. Yeah. These locusts are about to diminish, so he's going to have to back up here with these lings and roaches.
And there's that next worm now as well that he's been working on. So I think the Prism, using the Immortals to deny it on the one outside the main, this is already way better, because you're just trying to prevent that game of whack-a-mole from happening. And the lings are going to try and bully those Immortals away too.
He's going to try to sit underneath this War Prism so that if any Immortals drop out, they're just going to get surrounded and hit pretty hard.
Drop it on the Nidus, limit the surface area. I mean, really, you just want to target down the Nidus and get the Immortals out there. So he's like, okay, I can only attack the third base, and that's nice, because the rest of the slow Protoss army can all just stay there. And it's not ideal, because those locusts are just going to infinitely regenerate, but at the very least, you're able to fight with everything at once rather than being pulled around.
Yeah, I got to say, so far ShoWTimE's defense has been pretty good, but I'm worried about the supply here of Dark. He's now maxed out. He's going to be able to hammer away for a while now at ShoWTimE, who needs to have just perfect defense.
Yeah, and the other problem, of course, is you're focusing, you're tunnel visioning a little bit on dealing with this, but now that Prism needs to make its way back over there. Look at that, he's got the backup Nidus too, so he's like, okay, you want to try and focus the first one? I'll probably still be able to get the Swarm Host out, and then you just pop that Locust button and then get right back into the Worm. So the Immortals do come over, the Lings are going to push this back, and there we go. As that cooldown starts to reset, the Swarm Hosts are going to come right back out.
Oh my god, almost loses one of those Immortals here. Here come those Locusts now. And this is going in here towards the main. Does he just go for the Nexus, or?
He can get whatever he wants here.
Yeah, just whatever he could take, I guess.
Yeah, might as well.
Oh my god, and he gets the Nexus easy. Meanwhile, an attack out here by ShoWTimE is not going to cut it.
And this is the hard part, too, because it's just a massive Tier 1 army that just comes out to surround these units. The Prism's not there because it was dealing with a Nidus by the main base, and ShoWTimE is going to get picked off again. GG. Dark goes up 2-1.
Dark looking very strong. He's made the adjustments he needed to make. ShoWTimE, who looked like he might be able to take the series after game one. I mean, he won in a macro game. It's not the case anymore. Dark has identified the weakness. It appears to be in Swarm Host Harass.
It's extremely difficult to deal with that, and he's bullying him with the Swarm Host at this point. Yeah. He can't leave his base.
Yeah, and when he can't leave his base, suddenly there's so many more Niduses that are set up. You're going to be hammered over and over by these Locusts. Again, we don't seem to have any timing attacks. No. I don't know if we're going to have one later on here from ShoWTimE. We're going to go to a quick break. When we come back, Game 4 of Dark vs. ShoWTimE. Don't go away. Welcome back to WCS Group A in our first match. This is Dark versus ShoWTimE. Now, ShoWTimE had an incredible showing in Game 1. He crushed Dark in a macro game. But look, man, as you've heard me say before, there's a reason why we make them play a best of 5. Dark looks like he's almost downloaded ShoWTimE at this point in time.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was like that first game was a calibration match, and he's like,
Yeah.
oh, this is what you're doing? Well, I happen to know that Swarmhost Nidus is going to make your life a living hell now. Have fun dealing with this for the next 2 maps, and possibly the 3rd map in a row. I would not be surprised at this point to see more Nidus Worms and more Swarmhost Tasteless.
We're going to Triton for game number 4, and that's loaded up now. Dark for ShoWTimE continues on. In the upper left, in the red, our Zerg player, ranked number 1 in WCS points from Korea. He is
Dragon Phoenix Gaming, Dark.
And in the bottom right, in the blue, our German Protoss player who needs to turn this series around. He is
Makers, ShoWTimE.
The big thing I'm looking at here, Tasteless, Triton, there's no getting away, no getting around it. The 3rd base on this map is going to be way more exposed, way more open, and a little bit harder to hold on to than the last 3 maps that we had. You've got it tucked in on Acropolis, you've got it tucked in on the Thunderbird map, yeah. And then, of course, on like Disco Bloodbath, there's not a huge amount of area until those rocks are broken down, but you have to really be cautious, and I'm wondering if this is where we see ShoWTimE try to force it a little bit of an earlier aggression, because it seems like Dark says, well, you know what? You want to get 3 bases? Sure, have fun. You know, go to town. I'm going to get my Nidus Network and Swarm hosts before you can actually turn that 3-base economy into anything that can deal with it. And then I'm just going to beat you to death with Nidus Worms and Swarm hosts.
We still have yet to see a timing attack here from ShoWTimE, which is just, I mean, he can approach this however he wants. We're just so used to seeing Protoss, especially in Korea, try to come in there with some kind of blindsiding attack. Because, look, when you go for the macro play, when you go for the defensive play, that always welcomes in Nidus network abuse with Swarm hosts.
Yeah.
That's a very natural response from the Zerg if the Protoss is not engaging them fully. Now, you were mentioning earlier, Nate, that this is a map where the 3rd is a little bit more exposed. Maybe we see ShoWTimE do more of a timing attack coming in here, or perhaps we might even have a... I don't think we're going to have anything specifically timing-wise super early on from Dark. I don't think so. He might do it, maybe. I expect him to either try to do Nidus timings in the mid-game or stretch it out to a super late game.
Yeah, it's so hard to say, right? ShoWTimE's going to go into the Stargate again, so he's feeling that at least his baseline for whatever's going to happen is off of this Oracle opening. Now, whether he changes it up and we see something weird, you know, it's always possible, right? This is it, right? You don't want to lose this match, of course. So if he has anything that he thinks he needs to break out here, this would be it. It's going to be a Phoenix first opening, so maybe he's going to prioritize trying to deny a little bit of scouting or doing a bit more sustainable harass with the Phoenix energy rather than relying on the Oracles that are just a little bit more flimsy in terms of getting around those queens. But that's what I'm looking forward to seeing. If he's going to actually change it up in a meaningful way, I think this map is definitely going to be quite a bit different than the other 3, though.
So here's that Phoenix now. This Overlord was sacked to try to get as good of an idea as possible as to what exactly the Protoss was doing. If we see additional gases being taken here as well, now keep in mind he might be showing some false information here so that when the Overlord dies, let's see if he actually keeps all this. Sometimes you'll kill the Overlord and then you cancel that and then go into a different tech.
I was going to say, if not canceling it, I mean, at least for Dark, you're getting good information, right? He knows about those gases that were taken. He knows it's a Stargate opening. Obviously, the Phoenix killed his Overlord. So he gets the Fast Evolution Chamber again. And we're looking at something a little more similar to map number 1, where he gets that melee upgrade so that those early Zerglings can really do a lot more. And I think it makes a lot of sense, Tasteless, because you've got a map here where the opportunity to try and push that third base is going to be a little bit easier. You've got a few more angles, there's a couple of ramps that you can try to force field off if you're going to play that type of style. So having upgraded Zerglings early that can get, if you can get a surround, they're going to rip and tear those Protoss units to pieces.
I would welcome that if we do end up with that in this game here. The 2 Oracles, though, continuing to roam.
He's going to get
Baneling's Nest, by the way. Yeah.
Yeah, it looks it's basically the same thing that he started with on Acropolis, which begs the question now, like ShoWTimE, I don't think the look is necessarily crazy different from his perspective. The real difference before the lair basically was whether or not there was that Baneling nest, because he got roaches in all of the games so far. He had the lings around the map all of the games. It's not like it's just been Roach Ravager or like a big Roach timing. So ShoWTimE needs to be aware of that. And honestly, if Dark is doing the same thing that he was basically trying to do in game 1 and doesn't go for Swarm Host, I suddenly feel a lot better for ShoWTimE, because honestly his build is fantastic. But look at this, there's a 4th Oracle. So he is going to change it up a little bit.
This was going to counter all these Lings and Banes being made, assuming that the Oracles can get back here in time.
Yeah, that's the hard part of trying to hide them, right? You're going around the outside of the map, so getting them home is a little bit tricky, even if you go for a recall. Those Banelings are almost unmorphing. There's a lot of Zerglings coming out on the map. Tasteless as +1 is really close to finishing. And he's,
Oh my god, and even though this attack is very scary here with the 4 Oracles, I think it's much more important that he's down here trying to defend this base that he's taking over here at the 3rd.
Now 4 Oracles are over there. We pick off a Queen. There is not a Spore Crawler in this base, so microing back, he's getting a good bit of damage, and at least against the Queens, then maybe he can get onto the drones, could try to cancel that Spore Crawler, but there's a lot of Zerglings. That 3rd base is canceled. He has an Immortal in the natural. He's got something to block this off, and he's just going to try and focus on as many drones as he can before heading out.
The math for this one is a little bit fuzzy for me, because we've had a lot of drones killed and mining interrupted, but it seems like having a 3rd base for Protoss is maybe a little bit more important. Then again, these Oracles are still continuing to do so much damage, although they are very, very low on energy now.
Yeah, he's really trying to maximize the value out of this. You can see there's a little bit of a sense of urgency for ShoWTimE with his micro. And that War Prism is starting an attack zone gateway on accident there for a second. That, not good.
It looks like this build from ShoWTimE is almost mutated into a 2-base timing attack now. He says, okay, let's go ahead and try to push in here. I killed a lot of your drones. He didn't really lose workers at the 3rd base because it wasn't quite done. And so he's going to come forward now. He's going to try to push up. Zerg may rely on counterattacks. It's never a bad idea.
I like this, actually. The Oracles are going to go home and start to pick these units off while the rest of the army moves out, since they can reposition a little bit more easily to join that force. The Warp Prism is done.
Oh, good catch.
Banelings, great catch with the Oracles.
Yep, he's only going to get 2 of those Banelings out. They're continuing to attack in over here on the edge. I just don't know if Zerg is ready at all for this big attack that's about to hit the 3rd base at 12 o'clock.
Yeah. There is a side benefit to the push that he was doing, because he's been building a lot of Banelings back home. He doesn't have speed or anything, so the force fields are going to be super important, pinching off a few of them. But forcing the Warp-ins back home instead of out on the map, of course, can limit just a little bit of the growth of that Protoss army. But he's setting himself up for a huge flank. And actually catching these morphing Banelings on the back end is really nice.
Oh, good. Sick pickup there. Saving those at depth. He's going to try to come forward a little bit further here. These force field angles are not that hard to pull off here. As Protoss gets closer and closer and closer, and we have a few roaches, but it's mostly Ling Bane here, which is very obsolete against force fields.
Having those Oracles in the back is so nice, too. He's aware that Dark's trying to hinge just a little bit on getting a full surround. Beautiful force fields to continue to push those Banelings back. The Ravagers are not really in play yet, so Lings are going to fight these Warping in Zealots, but the rest of the army is over here. There's still a decent little bit of Sentry energy left, continuing to parse those forces, but now that Ravagers are coming into play, that Sentry energy is going to burn out fast, and if those Banelings get big connections, Tasteless, ShoWTimE's, well, he's going to be dead. He's just still on just 2 bases.
Yeah, ShoWTimE needs to make this work right here, right now, or he is out of the tournament. Or not out of the tournament, he's going to lose this match here. We have the Banelings coming down now and connecting over here with the Warp Prism units. I don't think there's necessarily enough to defend here. Protoss is getting pulled into a corner. You can't micro back much further than this.
No, Oracles are going to try and come in from the backside, but I think they're out of energy. Those Biles splashing across, not really anywhere to reposition those units. A Sentry with a lot of energy does get picked off.
Oh my god, he might barely have enough. He's continuing to push forward. The Spine Crawler is going to go down. The Hatchery is getting lower and lower and lower. And I don't think there's enough here to stop ShoWTimE.
Gotta say, I was feeling a little bit nervous. We got a lot of Stalkers, a few Immortals, not a ton to deal with the Lings that have that +1, but it seems like this army has just not been growing fast enough for Dark to be able to pick this off. Those early economic losses really hurting him badly, and those Oracles really contributing so much over the course of this game. Almost getting another Ravager kill there, but it'll just be a quick tap for him to pick that one off before this next fight, and he does grab that one, so ShoWTimE's army looking pretty damn strong, Tasteless.
Good dodge again here on the Biles as another Warpin comes in. ShoWTimE's been very intelligent by keeping that Warp Prism out of Ravager rage. And now I think he might even go up into the second or attack that fourth base, which is now his third base, just to the lower left side of our screenshot here.
I mean, this is a paltry Zerg army that we're looking at, Tasteless, and that third base actually going up and fighting that's really nice. It's fully saturated on the mineral count, so it is very heavily supporting the economy of Dark in this situation. He cannot allow this army to go up there. He'll have to come out and try and fight against this, but one thing you pointed out, very excellent control of that War Prism with keeping it alive. He's actually going to queue up another one to send over. Get the Roddy Prism, have your backup ready. Redundancy, 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 Tasteless.
It takes out the hatchery right there. I think this is almost at the point of no return. Dark, his drones...
Those are some sad drones, Tasteless.
Yeah, his drones are now marooned out on the map, unable to get back home and continue mining. A push comes forward. Now, it's hard to not be absorbing a lot of corrosive biles here as you try to push up this ramp, but I think there's just so much here from ShoWTimE, it does not matter. And again, this was an impromptu two-base attack. This was forced by Dark here because those Lings and Banelings denied the third base. And ShoWTimE has proven that he can intuit how to do a timing attack after he has lost a third, and it appears this should be beating Dark in this game.
Big shout out to the Oracles coming in to help during this engagement. The drones are being pulled off the line, Tasteless, to try and stop ShoWTimE, but he will not be defeated, and we are going to game number 5.
GG. So sick. This is such a good series. What a treat. I thought this was going to be the one series that, frankly, might be very one-sided, might be very short. Not the case. And ShoWTimE knows exactly what he just pulled off there.
Oh, that was awesome. You think about the way that the last two games played out. He's able to do this macro thing. He gets up to his 3 bases, and then he just drowns in the blood of Swarm Host, dropping those locusts all over him. And that can be one of those things that really mentally breaks you. You're like, oh my God, this is it. It's going to be 3-1. Like, how am I supposed to deal with this if this comes again? No, he makes the adjustment for the map. He picks up every single thing that he needs. And, well, he's able to force that final map to decide who is going to go to the winner's match.
Guys, this could be it for Dark. It's 2-2 right now. ShoWTimE. ShoWTimE. In a moment where he was basically overshadowed by almost all the other players, is now tied up with the #1 ranked WCS Korean player. It's all going to come down to this game right here, right now. Dark versus ShoWTimE, and our last match of the day starts now. In the bottom right, in the red, our Korean Zerg player. He is
Dragon Phoenix Gaming, Dark.
And in the upper left, in the blue, our German Protoss player. He is
Makers, ShoWTimE.
So let's remember here, WCS points are obviously not a bad metric for who's where. Of course, it does show us, how the course of the year went for that player. But ShoWTimE said some very wise words before the series started. He said, what's most important is I just got to this part of the tournament, because now I just got to win and move on. Now, obviously, nobody's going to be moving on to the next phase of the tournament yet. Nobody's going to be eliminated yet. But this is a very scary moment here for Dark if he loses this. Dark was really supposed to 3-0 or maybe 3-1 this player.
Yeah,
and the fact that he's not, and we're tied up 2-2 with games looking like this. Whoa, crazy build.
Yeah, what's with the... He's got quite an early forge over here.
Yes.
Now,
yes.
He had made this comment at breakfast. He's like, I've actually had a little bit of success with cannons. I'm like, oh goodness, ShoWTimE. Cannons.
Cannons.
Oh my God.
But those are buildings.
He's going to build buildings in his opponent's base.
I thought cannons were defending.
And this isn't...
Maybe defending your attack.
I'm just saying, with that cybernetics core finishing up too, I mean, things could get absolutely
Oh my
wild,
God.
right? I mean, you've got cannons, but Tasteless, it's not like we have never seen someone proxy a robotics facility as well.
Yeah.
So this could also just be to stunt the economy as hard as possible, and then he goes back into it back home. But ShoWTimE wants to take control of this game, and he's saying, look, I'm going to do an opener that you have to respond to. Whatever is going to happen, whether this does a ton of damage or not, you are going to be playing my game.
Yes, this is no longer about whatever Dark's big vision of this matchup in this series is going to be. It's now all about ShoWTimE's attack and whether or not it can be held off. And we do have one queen that is edged out of cannon range and is now going to set up more creep tumors over here. The queen on the main, as well as a spine crawler, has actually advanced forward. Now the probe was killed, which means these cannons are unable entirely and totally to see up onto the high ground, and therefore the queen and the spine crawler could just start to tear them apart.
It looks like he was trying to keep a pylon at the last second there too to maintain a little bit of the vision and buy some more time for those cannons, but that probe being picked off, of course, that is the opener of rifts.
Okay, this seems
cannons.
like it backfired pretty heavily here. Like
it's a lot of resources, right? 3 pylons, multiple photon cannons.
This is
probes.
more resources than what he killed off easily. And so, you know, you're supposed to try to keep that vision on the high ground for a little bit longer. Then we have different versions of this. We've seen Stalker pushes come out with this rush. We've seen Immortal pushes, especially from Haas last year, that were crazy. But I'm already very worried for ShoWTimE because that was...
Yeah. He did force the spines to be built, which you normally wouldn't go for super fast.
Sure.
But I think what I actually really like from Dark is he's saying, well, I had to build these spines and, you know, a couple of these units, but I'm actually just going to go for a crazy fast lair. And ShoWTimE is building a Void Ray. So, I mean, his goal was to make this game weird. He has succeeded, Tasteless.
We are in the territory of weird.
Yeah, so I mean, there's definitely some value to having that, of course.
Nidus.
Okay. Well,
here we go.
Suddenly, I actually think this Void Ray might be like a 3,000 IQ play.
Yeah.
If you want sustained damage against armor, which Nidus Worms, by the way, happen to be armored. If he can be aware of it, if he can get on top of that, this actually could work out really nicely for him, because if he goes straight for an Oracle first, he may not actually have enough energy to deal with him just building multiple Nidus Worms at a time up the front. Because with those Spine Crawlers and the Queens, this is a Nidus you want to be in the main. You cannot move those Spine Crawlers through Nidus networks.
Yeah, good thing to
It's
point
against
out
the law.
there, Nathanius, is that, yeah, the Nidus has to be here. And it looks like already ShoWTimE seems to, maybe he's got a read on him.
There it is. It's on the way.
There it is. Okay, it's going to be actually outside here.
He doesn't see it, which is unfortunate. But the Void Ray would still be nice for trying to push back the spines if it comes to it. But that does mean he's going to be less likely to worry about the Nidus in the main. But like I said, it's that Nidus up the front. The Queens are here. The Spine Crawlers are going to arrive just in time.
Yeah, and those spines really parlay nicely into this build order. Because the spines can be put down there, this becomes much more of a headache and a much more difficult position here for the Protoss to take the fight at. By the way, the lack of surface area here is going to be very uncomfortable for ShoWTimE. There's not a lot of room to maneuver here.
Yeah, it's all about the Queens. They are what is going to prevent this Void Ray from just at least killing the Nidus and pushing everything else back. So he's going to jump on top of it immediately with both Oracles. Shield Battery helping, micros the Queen inside of the Nidus and pulls it back out. He's doing a little bit of that pickup micro that we would talk about, except with that Nidus network, that Void Ray, you cannot lose that Void Ray.
That Nidus is a war prism right now being microed. The Void Ray has been turned on. It's taking more and more damage, though. The hull at about a half HP. Meanwhile, there is a Nidus coming into the main.
That could be absolutely devastating. All the units up here at the front. He's like, all right, cool. Yeah, have fun. Kill the Spine Crawlers. It's all good. The Lings are about to be flooding into that main base.
God.
The probes are on the run, Tasteless.
Surrounding this Nexus, and I don't see anything over here to defend. 3 more Queens coming up. The Void Ray scrambling to try to help keep this alive. The Nexus now only with HP remaining.
And that Oracle running out of energy, taking damage. Those Queens have so much range to push these air units off of protecting the ground army. And another Nidus network finishes. He's got his back up, and ShoWTimE is being overwhelmed here in game number 5.
We have more Lings coming out right now, and it looks like ShoWTimE is going to ditch the main. Meanwhile, the Spine has been positioned to hit the gateway outside.
He's bringing everything. All the probes are going to come. 37 of workers with these Stalkers, with that Void Ray. He cannot lose that Void Ray, pulling it back once more, but Lings flooding into the Nidus and out into the base of ShoWTimE. Those Queens do have energy for transfuses to help keep this alive. That worker lead ShoWTimE had is gone. The Void Ray is dead. The Oracle has no energy to contribute to this defense, Tasteless.
The Queens do get chased out, though. The rush is starting to lose momentum. We have another attack coming up here at the entrance.
That's fine. He had to do it to him. He had to do it to him, Tasteless. Spine Crawler right in the front of his face, picking off and dealing damage to these units, the shield batteries, burning through that energy, trying to stop this. Now, keep in mind, of course, ShoWTimE with those, he didn't lose the main base, so there is a lot to be said for that.
Yeah, had he lost the main base, I think we'd be close to checkmate here for ShoWTimE, but the fact that that is still alive, he still has 2 more gases to mine from. There is another Nidus, though, that's going to pop up actually behind the minerals in the main.
Yeah, and this is what makes it so difficult, too, because he has a few Zealots in his main base that were kind of dancing around, but they did not immediately get to that Nidus, and it finishes up. And I actually really like to contaminate on the Nexus. He's like, oh, yeah, you're losing your workers. Have fun trying to replace those. You can't even build anymore.
He's continuing to spill through here. That Nexus very low. We go back into the main. It is just barely, I think, going to get saved. Hold on, more Zealots and Stalkers are coming up. He's trying to get into there, the point where he can hit these Queens and chase them back through the Nidus.
And he's getting some work done over here, so the Queens push back. He gets another one of them before it's able to run away.
Oh, he's
the
so
Nexus
good.
is still up.
This
Kinda
is so
awkward,
crazy.
too. Can't
Guys,
wall with buildings in the natural either,
Zerg
by the
does
way.
not even have workers mining at his third base, okay? I mean, Protoss can hold on to this. Protoss can very realistically bounce back.
I'm not going to lie, I thought he had almost reached that point of no return, but there we go. His units on patrol in that main base, going to shut down the next Nidus network. So ShoWTimE, he's not going down without a fight, and he's starting to recover.
Oh
That worker
God.
count, Tasteless, it's very, very important to keep in mind. He has not lost too much to try and find a way to pull this game back.
This map is now Nidus free. Will ShoWTimE try to do a timing attack, or is he going to try to slow down and rebuild and recuperate? Because Dark, having sacrificed the opportunity to have so many drones this game because of that attack, he's going to have to choose if he wants to try to make that again. So far, it looks like he just wants to try to do another attack timing.
Yeah, there's some really tricky parts about this. You kind of want to get across the map because you know that they've been investing so much that the only way for Dark to follow this up, he'd have to build drones at home, right? So
Right.
You're trying to do that. But the creep spread, you don't have a detection. He
That's a
has
very
to
good
build.
point.
He has to build an observer, and even if you had an oracle, one revelation won't cover all of that. So you can't take your third base because it's covered in creep. You can't wall off your natural and go for an all-in because it's covered in creep. So all you can do is build a robotics facility and, well, try to take a base that's really hard to take and have your probe killed.
Yeah, what an interesting situation this is here for the Protoss. Now, Protoss has basically stopped everything. This army is not fast, so it's kind of hard to move across the map, you know.
He sees it, too.
The creep idea is also very important. What Nathanius was pointing out is that, yeah, the third is not acquirable until that creep is cleaned up, and we need to have observers out for that to happen.
Yeah, it's a really unfortunate position that you at the end of this attack, and it just shows like how smart of Dark it was to build that creep tumor line also so far back, because it wasn't just good for the spine crawlers, of course, but you're just making the Protoss' life miserable, and you're also inviting them to try and all-in you off of 2 bases. Say, yeah, well, you can't take your third, you should just push me while I build up and get ready for that attack. So Hallucinated Phoenix Scout goes out. It's like, okay, the Zerg is on 3 bases. There are roaches coming out. Roach speed is done, right? That lair was very early. That was easy to get. So you get the Observer, and you just have to go straight into Immortals.
So the 4th base is being taken here for Dark as things begin to slow down after a very hectic opening here. I actually thought Dark was going to kill him. When we saw the
I certainly
Nexus,
thought when he had to pull the probes that it was going to be all ogre.
There's a Nexus at 20 HP. I thought, no way. No way is they're going to let that stay. But ShoWTimE was just on top of defending in every possible location, getting out in front of it and denying it. And nicely done. So worker count
What
now.
a game.
It's so insane. The series has been so good.
This of course this had to be the way that map 5 would be going as well, because it's not necessarily easy for Dark to try and get something done here without using another Nidus network or going into Swarm Host, because as long as ShoWTimE is aware of the army position and he keeps cranking out Immortals, roaches aren't going to be necessarily fantastic against that. Look where he's putting this infestation pit too. He's like, oh, send a Hallucinated Phoenix into my base. You're not going to see that. Another Nidus starts outside of that the higher ground base.
Now, it does seem like Dark has set this build up that even after it fails, it's not like he could have been attacked or killed off or anything like that.
Yeah.
Instead, he's going to go ahead and take a 4th of his own. So what looked to be very all-in-ish is, in fact, I guess not. He's pretty stable overall.
Yeah, I really feel like it was just that his tenacity with going back and forth with those Niduses, but having the creep, just the vision, like seeing where the army is. 3 roaches are going to force a recall back to this 3rd base. So these units trying to catch these. 4 probes are picked off, but Tasteless.
Swarm host.
I'm starting to sweat. We got 16 swarm hosts coming out. These oracles are going to find some drones to microwave over at the 4th, but 16 swarm hosts.
Yeah,
what is he going to do?
He already had the Nidus tech as it was, right? Why not just tech into swarm host and then try to pelt him with Locust the same way he won the other games?
Like in a miracle world, you prevent any more Nidus networks or Nidus worms from finishing. But with the number of roaches that he has on the map too, like unless he kills all of them here and then he can immediately deny the Nidus worms in that game of whack-a-mole after killing these drones, like it's still going to be so difficult. And you know what? This is a really good pick.
Oh, he's on top of it. ShoWTimE is really adapted here. He's going to be able to deny this. And the moment you see that, you know it's going to be swarm host play.
But he's still got the roaches by the 3rd base and another Nidus. So it's a
hold
constant
on.
challenge. If he can get this one too, that would be really nice.
He spots it. There's roaches here to try to help defend. Does he just target down the Nidus anyways? Oh, I'm sorry. There's another. Oh, is there another Nidus network down there?
There's a lot of roach Ravager. Now, he just morphed a bunch of Ravagers over there. And the thing is, his army can fight. Possibly fight. I'm not actually sure if it can fight a whole wave of Locusts, but it can fight the Roach Ravager. But if he gets those Locusts out up front with the Ravager Bile supporting him, I mean, he's going to be in a world of hurt. So ShoWTimE is just the world's craziest game of whack-a-mole right now.
Okay, he comes forward again now. In this engagement, the Locusts are going to have to be used in a defensive way instead of trying to hammer onto the 3rd base.
Yeah, that is quite nice. That's the other side effect of pushing it like this is that, yes, you can build that Nidus from really far back, but the Locusts do have a timed life, so it gives you a little bit more opportunity as ShoWTimE to withstand that attack, and he doesn't lose quite as much as he had in the previous matches here. Oracles are able to get on top of some of the expensive units like those Ravagers, also very nice, and denies another Nidus network.
Yeah, it just seems like ShoWTimE is managing to push this away further and furthermore. So many more Roaches and Ravagers masked up, but he did not invest in a tech that's very easy to utilize in the late game. If these swarm hosts get cornered and killed off, it's going to be very bad for Dark.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing is you're trying to catch these little squads that are looking for those Niduses, but great control with the War Prism, pulling those units back, doing his best to keep his army alive. As long as the Locusts aren't able to get a big wave onto your bases, kind of blindside you, the army can do some work, but ideally, with so much supply invested into those swarm hosts, like you can't build any more actual army units. If you could deal with the wave or shut it down and deny it very nicely and try to make a swift counterattack, that could be really sweet. Getting some Archons out now. Great juggling with the War Prism, too.
Okay, those swarm hosts going to do a lot of damage, but as the dust settles, a lot of Archons, a lot of Immortals, and these Oracles doing so much damage to the Ravagers.
Yeah.
And as time passes, Dark's army seems to be getting less and less sophisticated as Protoss is just comfortably teching up after defending all of these attacks from the Nidus networks.
So much supply is invested into those swarm hosts. They have to do something huge, or this army coming over. You have to ask yourself, he's got a Nidus going up on the top side, but if this army comes down to his base, he's going to need everything to throw at him to defend this attack. Like, just Roaches aren't going to do it. With this many Immortals and Archons, you are not defending this without using that wave of Locusts.
And this is just a 4-base Zerg, which is about to be matched by the 4-base Protoss as the lower left is being taken. The attack comes in here, but if you can push through one wave of Locusts, you're going to tear down the majority of the Zerg's army.
And he actually baits. We see I don't think that was all the swarm hosts, but he gets quite a few.
It's all of them.
That might be all of them.
Yeah, that's
so
a lot.
at this point, he pulled back at the perfect timing as these Locusts are going to start to time out, and then you make that push.
Yeah.
You've got yourself about a 20-second window to try and hit this base and fight this army. Those are Hydralisks, but the range upgrade still just a couple seconds away from finishing. That +1 attack is not done yet either, and you've got +2 Charge Lot Immortal Archon crashing down onto the base of Dark.
ShoWTimE continuing to push up here. He may be trying to go for this base at the very center right. He's got a very good angle here. These Archons out here in the front. The drones, no easy way to keep them defended.
And he's getting what he wants. He's able to get onto those workers on that base. Now the next wave of Locusts is going to come. He had a choke point to try and use those force fields to keep the army away. Will have to retreat from the Locusts, but I will say the nice thing about this for ShoWTimE is you're keeping the fight on the other side of the field. It's not this game where you're defending and constantly bleeding stuff out. He was able to secure another expansion on the bottom left. Of course, I hear the words of a famous Frenchman echoing in my mind, tasteless. The
Supply.
The supply.
Supply. It's been quite a seesawing match here. Again, the Nidus comes up. This time the target is going to be the 4th base, which is very fresh, right over here.
Yeah. He did deny the worm that was on the top side, so this is the angle of attack. Other side benefit of the way this game's played out for him, not a tremendous amount of creep spread. It's not like the reinforcements are coming in crazy fast, and you really ideally just want to burn these locusts as far away from your own base as possible. They deal tons of damage, but they do not last forever.
Hydra Lurker coming up here behind this, so it's possible the Zerg is going to get a pretty good foothold just outside of where this base is.
A couple of those units stepped a little bit far forward there as another Archon gets picked off. But, yeah, I mean, the Lurker transition, we know the power of those with that AoE damage, but it's not like a Mortal Charge Lot Archon in a good engagement. It's not like they can't break that either.
Right.
And we finally get to see ShoWTimE actually pull off some potential harass with that Prism making it into the main base. He has spent the majority of this series just defending against big attacks coming from his opponent. Nice thing for that is he gets to deny this 5th base, but he also spots the hive as it finishes. So you get a bit more information. He sees the Lurker Den. All of this is very important. That Immortal.
Oh.
He's like, what did I just walk into? Oh my God!
Not able to get anything there. Maybe gets one. Okay,
wow.
Not bad.
He tries to...
Even getting one's pretty big.
It's a little overly micro to actually cost him a Swarm Host there, but that base could get devastated here. We do have a lot of Lurkers, not a ton of support for the Immortals as these Hydras run up onto them. Nexus is sniped. 10 drones were picked off, but losing that base hurts a lot for ShoWTimE, and more Hydralisks continue to pour out. He's going for Psystorm, but there's just so much to deal with coming every which way.
ShoWTimE has been a real hero holding off all these different attacks, but at the same time, Dark has been so graceful at transitioning and switching techs up here. It seems like once ShoWTimE's held off some kind of an attack, there's not a real clear option, a counterattack or some kind of plan for where he can play the game to.
Yeah, there was definitely a soft moment for Dark where he was trying to make that transition into the Hydras when he was still primarily Roach Swarm Host.
Yeah.
But now he's got so many Hydralisks. You're not going to be able to just walk that Charge Lot Immortal Archon into it. You need to have those storms. You need to land them. Of course, the storms are going to still have value at trying to push back like maybe a wave of locusts, but their energy is something that's going to be kept in concern. The Swart Prism is really the big thing that he has. It's like, okay, well, get some Vipers or something so that I don't have these big Warpins inside your base.
Keep in mind that this bottom right quadrant that the Zerg controls is going to mine out pretty quickly here. It's going to come down to the 6 o'clock or the far upper right expansion over here. But at the same time, there's not a lot of bases here for Protoss. Protoss just barely is on 4 bases after rebuilding here.
Yeah, we see
that Nexus is close to finishing.
A couple of those storms did get used against, and I think that might have been the Prism picked off there. So it gets a Revelation. Nice thing about having that Stargate from the start of this game. Can't you believe this was like Cannon Rush into Nidus counterattack?
Oh gosh, yeah, I almost forgot on some
Nidus.
level.
And I'm like, man, hell of a game we've had as we cross the 20-minute mark, plus 3 missile weapons on the way for Dark. And actually a couple of these Lurkers caught off guard, gets a pick off there. I believe Adaptive Talons has finished, so those Lurkers are going to burrow real quick.
Okay, the Locusts come in again, and this is so much damage. I mean, you can't stop this.
The DPS is insane.
The third just cannot finish. Now, I think ShoWTimE's had some similar ideas here by having small numbers of Zealots warped in to hit different locations over here.
That hatch is pretty low on health. He doesn't necessarily need to fight the army to get the base picked off.
Yeah. If he just can edge in there with a few of those Immortals, he might be able to get it. Is that what he's going to do?
Yeah, just tap it.
Go back.
Oh, wow, he's just going to actually jump on top of the Lurkers. He gets a few kills there. Observer is killed. Of course, we did have Revelation tag on some of them. I mean, killing that hatch, definitely nice. The things that worry me, though, we have 8 more Lurkers finishing up, but ShoWTimE's having a difficult time reaching that 200 supply mark. It's been a real slugfest. He just can't get that big Protoss army you want in this situation to just make that one unstoppable, Falcon punch straight through the heart of the Zerg.
He's been floating at 120 a lot in this game. I think when he got Storm, things started to calm down as far as these attacks with the Locust. But the problem is that Storm is at times a band-aid solution for Locust because the Locust can regenerate faster than the Storm energy can come.
A very stressful situation. I'm honestly just amazed watching both of these players go back and forth. So many opportunities for one of them to just screw up. You lose the Swarm Host, you don't get back in the Nidus fast enough, or it gets picked off, or that wave gets on top of your army and you miss those storms. Like, this has been beautifully controlled on both sides, and just a hell of a slugfest for game number 5.
Another attack over here on this hatchery. Also bear in mind that there's a lot of minerals and gas banked up here for Dark.
Here's the deep ball. He's like, well, I'm just going to chuck this one downfield, see if I can get a huge Nidus inside the main and pick off the tech in the infrastructure. 2 Zealots are going to come out, but that might not be enough to pick this one up before
it's barely
it
not
finishes.
enough.
Is anything going to unload
No,
though? No,
barely not.
So he does start another one immediately outside the low end, but ShoWTimE already looking over there may see an opportunity to do something about that. Zealots are going to get over to this base, just a single Hydralisk while he hits that northeast expansion.
Okay, not bad at all.
Stretching that Zerg army. 14 more lurkers are on the way, by the way. What?
Zerg is in a super turtley position
There's
here.
some weird Zerg mech or something we're watching, tasteless. I have no idea what's going on. Another Nidus is going to be in the
Yeah, we have
natural.
lots of Banes and lurkers here, and then Swarm hosts.
Well, I'm just saying, if 14 lurkers are able to pop out a Nidus onto your main base ramp, you are dead. So that is, you're playing with some very dangerous games. How many lurkers
very hard
is
to move it. It's a ridiculous number. I mean, it's an insane number. I guess he knows he cannot afford to actually give up any more bases. He needs to just turtle.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I will say one thing. Once ShoWTimE started trying to push out on the map, the advantage has been he's been able to take bases. That third base, yeah, that base is just that's a sad story for that base. But he's got the bottom left one now, and he picks off this Nidus. Another one is going to start up over here, but he's got that army where he's threatening Dark, and actually there's nothing over here to protect this northeast base again.
Okay, hitting this base, I think 100% this is going to go down, and this means that Zerg is only going to have this base that's basically like the third base that you take on this map. Now the Swarm hosts are doing a lot of damage. Fortunately, there are enough Zealots, which are quite expendable, to get in the way of this.
You're not moving up that ramp.
Yeah, and those lurkers are going to keep Dark in the game for a long time, I think. By the way, ShoWTimE is knocked down at 3 bases once more.
And the other thing that hurts here in this situation too is he's ends up burning so many of his warpins back inside of his base too, where he's just like, okay, I have to warp Zealots in to stop Niduses, and I think that one is going to finish uninhibited inside of his main. There's a lot of pricey tech here. If he's able to get a wave of Locust out, he could kill almost everything in here. I would put some lurkers through that Nidus.
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, if you could take out the Templar Archives and all these gateways, that's going to be huge.
Yeah. He's only got 1 mining base. He's taken 2 Nexi right now,
right.
But it's that 1 southwest base, and he's actually mined out half the resources on it,
know,
so he's pretty broke.
One of the things that's funny about this is you normally would never take that many Nexuses, but I guess it makes sense if you're against Swarm hosts, because you just need to run away.
Yeah, well, there you go. This is another 8 probes, but I have no idea how he engages those lurkers, Stasis. Like,
I don't know.
There are... This is a disgusting number of lurkers. This is... I have no idea. They're all his, like, longest time fans in Twitch chat that just never speak. That's what we've got. We've got so many lurkers. You are not getting... I do not know how you're getting through that.
Really nice storm again. That's starting to thin out the numbers over there. Dark now almost maxed out on lurkers. Getting Vipers maybe to harpoon units into the lurkers.
You abduct a unit into 20 lurkers, it's going to die real quick. The Oracle's trying to police the map from these swarm hosts that are still just being such a nuisance. Slow Zone trying to help out a little bit there, but Locust, they kill stuff. That's what they do. They're very good at it. That Nexus will get picked off. That's why he built 2, so he does have that base. 26 probes mining away at it, but stuck around that 120 supply mark has kind of been where ShoWTimE's lived in this game.
Yeah, I think that we might be seeing the beginnings of the end here. It seems like ShoWTimE can't push in anywhere, and the Locusts are continuing to take out Nexuses more quickly than the Nexuses can be used to mine up enough minerals to put Protoss into some kind of survivable position.
He has to pull everything back once again. You have all of these absurdly sustainable units cost-wise for Dark, ridiculous number of lurkers, so many swarm hosts. And like, what is he really spending his money on? It's Niduses, and those are, you know, it's $1 for a dozen of them.
Another Nidus comes down. This has been such a crazy PvZ, man.
Well, yeah,
I'm loving this. It's fascinating to see the mass lurker play. He knows that the Protoss army is scary and hard to fight, but if you have that many lurkers, you just can't break into any of those positions.
Yeah. Well, you're just saying like, hey, I'm going to harass you to death with swarm hosts. And then at some point, your only option will be to attack into me. At which point, I brutally kill you because I have 20 lurkers. He starts another Robo and a Robotics Bay. So presumably his Hail Mary play is Disruptors because there are so many lurkers?
Maybe. That's actually probably the best response to a situation like this, is to try to start shooting Disruptor balls into different areas. The Swarm hosts are out once more.
Oracle's trying to do something. They do kill a Swarm host. And this Locust Wave, well, he's like, I'm just going to stop taking these bases because you keep attacking over here. There's the Overseer, says, okay, Northeast base still up. Drop another Nidus Network. If these guys with like almost no health kill this Nexus, I'm gonna cry.
It's so funny how fast the damage comes out.
Once
they get down there.
I'm sweating. I'm sweating Tasteless, but he's making his big move out. This is okay. He's gonna turn the lurkers around. I was gonna say he's got so much here. Maybe he wants to avoid the base trade, I guess. The fear of having his infrastructure picked off and then a recall maybe.
Oh,
but
Templars being taken out. Ouch.
Full energy as well.
Okay, so he takes out that Nexus. It's now just what, 12 o'clock?
Yeah. 2 disruptors being built at a time, so his ace in the hole play is going to come out now. If he can land good hits, it's going to make that supply count not matter as much because he can shave off so much of it at a time. But now you've got 20 lurkers sieged outside your base. No,
Pretty
that's it.
scary.
You cannot walk here.
I don't know how you're going to stop them from just unburrowing, walking forward, and then burrowing up again and destroying everything that you have.
Inch them forward like siege tanks, man. What are you going to do? There's
leapfrog them.
There are so many lurkers with the swarm host. This absurdly cost effective. At the end of the day, even if he was able to kill half of this army, he's got 4,000 minerals and 1,300 gas. Like, he can flood out a lot behind this. So
yeah, that's very true.
ShoWTimE can't just kill this army. He has to kill this army without losing anything.
Look at the gas slowly trickle in. Great harpooning, destroying those Archons.
Yeah, and it's so hard. He's got the disruptors coming towards the front, and one shot's going to get good amount of Hydras, but it's not enough.
Hell yes. What a series. Dark ultimately comes out on top, but ShoWTimE is proving that he is a very, very worthy opponent. By the way, nobody's eliminated. Nobody's moving on yet.
It's just the first game of the day, baby.
First game in the group.
Wow.
I thought ShoWTimE really adapted. Obviously, Dark did a better job overall of adapting, but ShoWTimE almost was able to handle the Nidus abuse from Dark.
Yeah, my first thing